You've arrived at CozySideAudio, where dreams begin with a story. Whether you're studying, journaling, or just chilling, this one's for you. If you vibe with this kind of content, go ahead and like, share, and subscribe for more.
CozySideAudio presents Under the Bright Lights, The Field of Futures. Chapter 1, The Field of Futures. The air in Chapel Hill felt heavy with history. Even before they stepped onto the pitch, Rachel could feel it pressing on her skin, that strange, electric weight that seemed to hum from the turf. From the far end of the bleachers, the banners looked faded in the late August light, a patchwork of blue and white decades stitched together. 1982, 1993, 2009, 2012, 2024. And then nothing. 11 empty seasons. Now it was 2035, and she was standing exactly where she dreamed of standing since she was 8 in Carolina blue, on the most famous field in women's college soccer. And she couldn't stop thinking about how long it had been since anyone had added another number to that line. Laura stood beside her, a half step behind. Same uniform, same ponytail, same pale scar above the left eyebrow. But where Rachel's eyes were wide, soaking in the noise of the world, Laura's were still, watching, calculating. "Smells like cut grass and pressure," Rachel said under her breath. Laura didn't answer right away. She just nodded once, her gaze following the white boundary lines toward the goal. "It's shorter than it looked on TV." Rachel laughed softly. "That's your first thought?" "It's all angles," Laura murmured. "Shorter field means faster press." "God, you're such a coach. And you're such a highlight reel." That was how it had always been. Rachel dreamed loud. Laura dreamed quietly. Rachel wanted to be seen. Laura wanted to be right. Twins, identical at birth. And yet they'd always felt like mirror images caught mid-reflection. Everything one did in color, the other did in grayscale. "The field test. Bring it in." The voice cracked across the field like a whip. Coach Avery Langford was already in the center circle, lean, silver-streaked, a calm storm of authority. She didn't need volume. The way she stood made people fall silent. Her assistant, Jessie Monroe, was checking data on a wrist tablet, while Maddie Serrano juggled a ball absent-mindedly near the keeper's box. Rachel and Laura jogged over, joining the cluster of Carolina blue. 25 players, 25 stories. One program starving for its next banner. Addie Grant, the captain, stood in the front row tall, disciplined, expression unreadable. Carmen Cho leaned slightly on one hip, eyes scanning like a hawk. Behind them, the juniors clustered, Mira Delaney already shouting encouragements, Kenzie Hale cracking her gum and grinning at nobody, and Talia Brooks, the goalkeeper, who radiated confidence like a sun you couldn't look directly into. Rachel caught eyes with Honey Keller, the other freshman starter rumored to be a phenom from the Virginia academies. Honey smiled shyly, then quickly looked away. Laura noticed everything, who gravitated toward whom, who avoided eye contact, who laughed too loudly. Coach Langford began. Coach Langford's speech. "I'm not here to talk about what this program was," she said. "That's in the air, you can feel it. The banners, the ghosts, the old stories, they're all watching. But we don't play for ghosts. We play for each other." The huddle tightened. This field doesn't care what class you're in, or how many stars you had on your recruiting profile. It only remembers the ones who showed up when it mattered. Her eyes flicked toward the freshmen, not unkindly, but like a scalpel finding its mark. "Some of you will start, some of you won't. All of you will earn every minute. The legacy you've inherited doesn't mean anything if you don't bleed for it." Rachel felt her chest tightening. Laura felt her pulse steadying. Every tackle, every sprint, every mistake, it's a test. And you will fail. Sometimes you'll fail alone, sometimes together. What matters is whether you stand up after the whistle. She paused, the sound of cicadas filling the air. "Now," she said softly, "introduce yourselves. If you don't know who's standing next to you, you don't know who you're running for." The circle. It began with Addie Grant, captain, voice crisp as chalk lines. "Addie Grant, center back, senior. Let's make this season mean something." Jayla Torres, striker, senior, trying to stay healthy enough to score a few. Carmen Cho, right back, senior. "I'll yell at you if you don't track back. Fair warning." Laughter, nervous and real. The circle continued. Mira Delaney, central mid, junior. Keep the ball, keep the faith. Talia Brooks, keeper. Don't test me high. I'm taller than I look. Kenzie Hale, forward/chaos. You'll hear me before you see me. Reina Osei, center back, sophomore. Quiet, but I'm watching you. Izzy Montrose, left back, tactical nerd. I own a whiteboard, don't ask. When it reached the freshmen, there was a subtle hush. Rachel went first. Rachel Davis Hitch, attacking mid or wing, freshman. Dreamed of this since forever. Her voice cracked just slightly and she laughed it off. Kenzie grinned at her. Addie nodded, measuring. Laura followed, quieter. Laura Davis Hitch, defensive mid, freshman. Rachel's twin. Someone whispered, "Oh God, there's two of them." The circle laughed again. Hannah Keller, striker, freshman. I just want to score goals. Serena Patel, outside mid or fullback, freshman. I run. A lot. Caitlin Rousseau, goalkeeper. Backup. Ready whenever. Nia Fontaine, center back, freshman. I like tackling people. Coach Langford smirked faintly. Good. First touches. Practice started in earnest. The heat was thick enough to taste, and the first drill rondo, 4-touch, rapid rotation, hit like a wake-up slap. Rachel thrived in chaos. She wanted the ball, demanded it, lost it, got it again. Laura hung back, intercepting, redirecting, organizing the connective tissue no one noticed until it wasn't there. Davis Hitch, quicker, Jessie Monroe barked. Which one? Talia called from the back. Both. Rachel smirked mid-turn. We're a 2-for-1 deal. Laura rolled her eyes. Focus, Rach. A cross-field scrimmage followed, 2 halves of Carolina blue colliding under a sky that seemed to hum with heat. Addie commanded the backline with a surgeon's precision. Mira ran until the grass itself seemed to move for her. Kenzie dribbled through space like she was dancing with danger. Goal! Hail again! Maddie Serrano shouted from the sideline. That's 3. You gonna stop her, Reina? Working on it, Reina said calmly, stripping the ball off Rachel on the next play. Rachel didn't sulk. She swore, laughed, sprinted back. Laura noticed the way Coach Langford's expression didn't change. She only watched, always watching. Twins at twilight. By the time the sun began to set, sweat had turned their jerseys nearly navy. The final scrimmage ended 2-2, with Rachel's late equalizer a curling shot from the top of the box, earning cheers from the sidelines. Laura had started the play with a crisp interception. You two move like you share a brain, Mira said as they jogged off together. Rachel grinned. Don't tell her that. She'll start giving me orders. Laura, I already do. They sat on the grass afterward, cleats dug into the turf, watching the sky fade to orange and purple over Dorrance Field. This is it, Rachel whispered. 4 years. Laura nodded. If we make it that long. Rachel turned. We will. Laura didn't answer, but she smiled, faintly, eyes still on the field. In that moment, with the dying light bleeding over the stadium, the ghosts of UNC's past seemed to stand quietly around them, not haunting, but waiting. Waiting to see if these 2 freshmen from nowhere could wake the echoes. Coach Langford called them back in one last time. She spoke quietly, but her words carried, Tomorrow, we start writing. You all know the names that built this place. Now I want to know yours. The team broke the huddle with a unified shout, the first of the season, raw and imperfect, but loud enough to echo through the trees. Carolina! And for the first time, the Davis Hitch twins felt the field answer back. Chapter 2. Baptism by Fire. The air felt heavier when the band started playing. The bleachers of Dorrance Field shimmered in late summer heat, the kind that made even shadows look tired. Carolina blue everywhere painted faces, flags, the smell of popcorn and grass and nerves. Opening night. UNC versus Tennessee. Ranked No. 8 team in the country against an unranked Tar Heel squad trying to prove it still mattered. The Davis Hitch twins jogged through the tunnel shoulder to shoulder, sunlight catching on their names as the announcer's voice boomed overhead. Welcome to Dorrance Field for your 2035 season opener. Your North Carolina Tar Heels. The crowd roared. Rachel grinned without meaning to. Laura just blinked into the light. Pre-game nerves. The locker room before kickoff was loud in the way quiet fear makes it loud. Too many jokes, too much stretching, too many cleats tapping tile. Rachel laced her boots and stared at her reflection in the metal of her locker. "You belong here," she told herself. "You belong." Laura sat beside her, rolling a ball under her foot, silent, absorbing. Coach Langford's voice sliced through the chatter. "Listen up." The players circled around her, all eyes on that calm, composed face. "Tennessee plays fast and mean. They'll try to bully you off the ball and make you chase shadows. Don't take the bait." Her eyes swept to Rachel. "Creativity is fine, chaos is not." Rachel nodded, even though her pulse was already hammering. "And for God's sake," Langford added, "win your tackles." Starting Wampan, GK, Talia Brooks, Def, Carmen Cho, Addie Grant C, Reina Ose Izzy Montrose, MID, Laura Davis Hitch, Mira Delaney, Rachel Davis Hitch, FWD, Kenzie Hale Jayla Torres Hani Keller. UNC's 4-3-3 looked balanced on paper. On the field, it would depend on one thing: whether the midfield twins could handle Tennessee's press. Kickoff, tweet, the whistle blew, and in that instant, all the noise of the crowd fell away. Laura's world became geometry spaces, angles, bodies in motion. She tracked every orange jersey, every passing lane. Her first touch was clean, a simple square ball to Mira, establishing rhythm. Rachel's world became fire. She wanted the ball now. When Mira found her wide on the right, she burst upfield, toe-tapping past one defender, then another. "Go, Rach!" Kenzie yelled. Rachel cut inside, unleashed a shot high, wild, adrenaline-soaked. It whistled into the stands. "Nice idea," Mira muttered, jogging back. "Next time, breathe first." Rachel smiled, breathless. "I don't do breathing." 15 minutes in, Tennessee pressed high, and UNC bent under the pressure. "Shift right! Shift!" Addie barked. Carmen Cho slid too late. A Tennessee winger whipped in across, ball in headed, and Talia Brooks leapt, fingertips pushing the shot over the bar. "Save! Talia Brooks denies the early opener!" The crowd roared. But the corner that followed was deadly. A scramble in the box, Addie's clearance half blocked, and a Tennessee forward slammed it home. 0-1. The stadium fell into that awful hush of first goals conceded too early. Rachel kicked at the grass. Laura just turned, expression flat, already thinking about shape, pressure, angles. Halftime, 0-1. The locker room buzzed with frustration. Sweat, steam, breathing heavy. Rachel sat on the bench, pulling her jersey collar, trying not to look at Coach Langford. She could feel Addie's eyes burning through her, the silent, we can't afford mistakes kind of look. Laura replayed sequences in her head, passing triangles that collapsed, the missed cover on the right side, the press that wasn't fast enough. Coach Langford didn't yell. "Better," she said quietly, "isn't good enough when you're losing." She looked around the room. "Stop playing scared of their reputation. Make them remember yours." Then she pointed to the whiteboard, circled the midfield. "Laura, I want you dictating. You see the game before anyone else. Prove it." Laura nodded, heart racing. Rachel caught her sister's glance. "You got this," she mouthed. Laura gave a tiny smile. "You too. Just less fireworks, more passes." Rachel snorted. "You're so boring." Second half. UNC came out sharper. Mira and Laura moved in perfect rhythm, triangles of control forming around the midfield. Kenzie Hale nearly equalized on a through ball from Rachel. Goal chance, just wide. The crowd surged. But Tennessee adjusted, swarming again. Their press was relentless, their tackles harder. Rachel got flattened once, twice, 3 times. "Get up, rookie," someone yelled from the Tennessee bench. She did, every time. Still, the cracks began to show. Laura intercepted one pass too deep, turned to clear, and a Tennessee striker pounced. Turnover at the edge of the box. Shot! The net rippled. 0-2. Laura froze, every sound in the stadium distant. She'd misread the angle. Her mistake. Rachel jogged back, eyes soft. "Hey, shake it off, we'll get one." Laura nodded, but her throat burned. Final whistle. When the whistle blew, it wasn't heartbreak. It was exhaustion. UNC 0, Tennessee 2. They'd been outmuscled, outsped, outcoached not by much, but enough. Rachel stood with hands on her knees, watching Tennessee celebrate at midfield. Laura stared at the scoreboard. Addie clapped once. Heads up, Tar Heels. We're not there yet, but we will be. Coach Langford just walked past, her voice quiet but cutting. You learned today what the difference is between talent and winning. Figure it out before next week. Post-game silence. The locker room was quieter than church. Cleats clattered against the concrete as players filed out for ice baths or interviews. Rachel stayed seated, unwrapping tape from her ankle. We could have had them, she muttered. Laura looked up. Yeah, we just didn't believe it soon enough. Rachel tossed her tape into the bin. Well, I believe it now. Laura smiled faintly. You'd better. Wake Forest's next. Late night, the empty field. Hours later, when the stadium lights were off and the fans were gone, the twins found themselves back on the field again. The sky was dark, cicadas buzzing somewhere out beyond the bleachers. Rachel lay on her back near midfield, staring up. Laura sat cross-legged beside her, arms around her knees. You still thinking about that turnover? Rachel asked. Always, Laura said. Good. Means you care. Laura tilted her head. You? Rachel grinned, though her voice was softer. I just keep replaying that first run when the crowd screamed. Felt like flying. Laura looked at her. You can't fly if we don't defend. Spoken like a true buzzkill. But Laura smiled, and when they sat there, just the two of them, the field didn't feel like failure anymore. It felt like a promise. Coach's office, the next morning. Coach Langford stood behind her desk, the stat sheet glowing on her tablet. Pass completion, 72%. Shots on target, 2. Turnovers in defensive third, 6. She exhaled slowly. Through her office window, the field looked peaceful again. Perfect green. Empty. Waiting. They're raw, she said quietly, but they've got it. Assistant Jessie Monroe leaned on the doorframe. Which one? Langford smiled faintly. Both. Different kinds of dangerous. When practice started that afternoon, the sun was brutal, the drills harder, but something had changed, a quiet edge, a rhythm taking root. As the twins ran side by side in sprints, Laura whispered between breaths, Next one's ours. Rachel's grin flashed. Damn right it is. And for the first time since arriving, they both believed it. Next match, versus Wake Forest, September 2nd, 2035. Home crowd. Rivalry. Time to prove Tennessee was only the beginning. Chapter 3. Sparks and Shadows. The sky over Chapel Hill was gray and heavy, like the air itself hadn't recovered from opening night. Practice had started early. No music, no chatter, just the sound of cleats slapping turf and Coach Langford's whistle cutting through the morning like a blade. Again? The girls jogged back to their cones. Rachel's ponytail stuck to her neck. Laura's jersey clung to her shoulders. Every repetition felt like penance, a silent apology for Tennessee. Midweek training. Mira Delaney's pass zipped across the turf. Rachel took it in stride, dragged the ball with her left, and pivoted inside. Better? Langford shouted. Don't wait for permission. Read the line, trust your instincts. Laura watched from midfield, controlling the rhythm like a metronome. The session was about spacing, about trust, and the difference between playing with each other and playing beside each other. After an hour, Addie called the team in. Look, Tennessee wasn't us. That was our ghost version. We're done with ghosts, yeah? Yeah, came the ragged chorus. Addie nodded once. Then we show Wake Forest who owns this field. Friday night, rivalry lights. When the team walked out against Wake Forest, the stadium lights were already humming like electricity. UNC in all blue, Wake in white and black, a classic ACC clash history and spite and pride. Welcome back, Tar Heel fans. After a tough opener, North Carolina looks to bounce back tonight against their in-state rivals, the Demon Deacons. Rachel cracked her knuckles. Laura bounced the ball at her feet. This one mattered. First half control and chaos. UNC started sharp. Laura and Mira were dictating early tempo, threading tight passes between Wake's lines. Rachel hugged the right sideline, testing defenders with her first touch, the kind that made fans inhale. In the 14th minute, it happened. Laura stole a ball in midfield, read it perfectly, and one touch to Mira, who lofted it diagonally toward Rachel. She trapped it mid-stride, burned past her mark, and ripped a low cross to the near post. Torres on the end of it. Goal! Jayla Torres opens the account for North Carolina. Dorrance Field exploded. Rachel screamed into the roar, arms wide, teammates swarming her. Laura jogged over, face calm, but eyes blazing. "Now that's breathing," she said. Rachel laughed. "I told you I don't do breathing." Wake Forest fought back hard. Their striker, number 9, was all elbows and speed. Addie Grant had to muscle her off the ball more than once, earning a yellow for one shoulder check too many. By halftime, UNC led 1-0, but the tension was razor thin. Halftime huddle. Inside the locker room, Langford stood over the tactical board, one hand resting on the whiteboard. "They're pressing high now," she said. "Laura Mira expect them to cut off your passing lanes. Rachel, I want you tucked in tighter. Don't leave Jayla stranded." Rachel nodded. "Got it." Langford paused. "Also, stop showboating." Rachel blinked. "That wasn't showboating, coach. That was... Add another step over and I'll bench you for a week." The locker room cracked up. The tension broke. Second half. The test. Wake came out furious. In the 63rd minute, their midfielder launched a through ball that split UNC's backline. The striker sprinted through one-on-one with Talia Brooks. Shot! Save! Brooks denies the equalizer. The stadium roared as Talia slapped the ball wide and punched the air. Addie turned and yelled, "That's how we do it, baby!" UNC countered instantly. Mira to Laura, Laura to Rachel. Rachel through the seam. Jayla Torres again one touch, one strike bar down, in. Goal! Torres again, 2-0 Tar Heels. The band played the fight song as the players piled into each other near the corner flag. Rachel jumped onto Jayla's back, screaming with joy. Final score, UNC 2, Wake Forest 0. The whistle blew, and this time it wasn't exhaustion. It was relief. It was rhythm. Coach Langford clapped once. "That's what belief looks like." Mira grabbed Rachel's shoulder. "You're chaos in cleats." Rachel grinned. "You say that like it's bad." Laura just smiled, letting the noise wash over her. She could feel the pulse of a team finding its spine. Sunday, Elon University away match. Small crowd, low lights, artificial turf that burned the skin on slides. The kind of match that tested focus, not fame. UNC started sluggish, 0-0 through 30 minutes. Sloppy touches, tired legs from Friday's war. Then Rachel snapped them awake. She stole a lazy back pass, cut left, and curled one from 25 yards. Goal! What a strike from Rachel Davis Hitch. A laser into the top corner. The UNC bench erupted. Laura sprinted to her, shouting, "You can't not breathe, huh?" Rachel laughed between gasps. "See? Air's overrated." Elon equalized just before halftime on a set piece, a cruel bounce that flicked off Addie's knee and in. Langford's voice cut through the halftime noise. Championship teams don't panic, they adjust. And they did. Second half, Laura's moment. For 70 minutes, Laura had been the quiet architect. But in the 71st, she stepped into the light. Rachel drew 2 defenders wide. Mira threaded a pass across the top of the box. Laura ran onto it perfectly, struck low, clean, unstoppable. Goal! Laura Davis Hitch with her first collegiate goal. Her sister was the first to tackle her in celebration. "Hell yeah! About time you did something fun." Laura rolled her eyes, laughing, heart-pounding. UNC held firm the rest of the way. Reina Osei cleared every ball like her life depended on it. Talia made 2 late saves that earned applause even from Elon's fans. Final, UNC 2, Elon 1. Bus ride back. The bus hummed through the Carolina night, dark windows reflecting tired, happy faces. Jayla was singing softly under her breath. Kenzie leaned against the window, earbuds in. Mira and Addie argued about who had more assists in high school. Rachel sprawled across 2 seats, half asleep. Laura sat across the aisle, journaling quietly formations, notes, mistakes, insights. Coach Langford looked up from her laptop, watching them. "They're figuring it out," Jessie said. Langford nodded. "Still raw, still wild. but they're starting to fight for each other, not just themselves. Midnight stop gas station, exit 184. The team piled out to stretch their legs. Rachel wandered toward the dark edge of the parking lot, soda in hand. Laura followed, shivering slightly in the warm wind. "You know," Rachel said, "I used to think winning would feel like fireworks, like it'd fix everything inside." Laura looked at her. "And?" Rachel shrugged. "It doesn't fix it, but it makes it quieter." Laura smiled. "I'll take quieter." They stood there in silence for a moment. Two sisters, two halves of something larger than either of them understood yet, until Addie yelled from the bus door, "Let's go, philosophers! Midnight curfew doesn't move for your feelings." Rachel laughed. "Coming, Captain." Laura slid her notebook into her bag. "Next stop's home." Back in Chapel Hill. When they rolled onto campus at 1:13 a.m., the field lights were still faintly on, just the maintenance glow left by habit. Rachel pressed her forehead against the glass, watching the grass blur by. That rectangle of green had already begun to change them. In 2 weeks, they'd gone from strangers to something like a storm, not yet precise, but gathering strength. Record 1, 1, 0, 2, 1, 0. Next matches, Duke versus Florida State, Liberty. The schedule ahead looked brutal. But when the twins stepped off the bus, stretching in the parking lot and laughing softly, the fear was gone. All that was left was hunger. Chapter 4. Under Lights, Under Pressure. The lights at Dorransfield burned like a sun dropped onto the turf. A crisp autumn breeze swept across Chapel Hill as the stands swelled with fans waving Carolina blue. The smell of popcorn, turf, and adrenaline mingled, and from somewhere in the press box, a commentator's voice boomed. "Good evening, folks. A packed house here at Dorransfield for what promises to be a thrilling showdown, North Carolina Tar Heels versus the 5th-ranked Florida State Seminoles." Rachel Davis Hitch stood near the sideline, her hands shaking slightly as she tightened her cleats. The grass glistened beneath the lights, perfectly manicured and impossibly green, stretching wide in front of her. She could feel the weight of thousands of eyes on her broadcast cameras, scouts, parents, fans, and herself. Laura Davis Hitch adjusted the strap on her shin guard, jaw tight, absorbing the field like a map. She saw lanes, gaps, angles. Every movement would matter tonight. Kickoff! The whistle shrilled and the ball was live. First half, the pressure mounts. Florida State pressed immediately. Their midfielders switched, cut lanes, and forced UNC into a defensive shell. Laura tracked every pass, sliding into pockets of space, intercepting 3 dangerous attempts in the first 12 minutes. Rachel, on the right wing, got her first touch 30 seconds later. She danced past one defender, then another. She wanted to create to dazzle, but she overplayed, attempting a cross that skimmed the sideline and out. "Early danger there, but a miscue from Davis Hitch," the announcer noted. Coach Langford barked from the sideline. "Control, Rachel. Don't make it about you, make it about us." Rachel exhaled through her nose, cheeks burning, but she couldn't shake the spark of adrenaline. She wanted to be seen, wanted to be the one remembered. Florida State's pressure paid off in the 22nd minute. A quick give-and-go split UNC's midfield. Laura had anticipated it, but hesitated a heartbeat too long. Shot from the edge of the box, goal! Seminoles strike first. 0-1. Rachel's stomach knotted. She ran back to cover, guilt and frustration feeding her pace, jabbing elbows and chasing shadows. Laura's expression was calm, but unreadable. She'd already cataloged the play, replayed it, and mentally adjusted formations on the fly. Davis Hitch twins trying to recalibrate, one firing, one calculating, the broadcast voice observed. Midfield duel. Laura's brilliance. UNC pressed back. Laura became the heartbeat, intercepting passes, pivoting under pressure, and distributing with surgical precision. Twice, she launched balls toward Rachel on the wing, who danced between defenders and delivered dangerous crosses. Rachel got one perfect look in the 35th minute. She cut inside, curled a shot, but FSU's goalkeeper leapt, fingertips grazing the ball. Save! Florida State keeper denies Davis Hitch with an incredible reflex. The stadium roared. Rachel slammed her glove into the turf, heart racing. She had tried to carry the game on her own, but tonight the Seminoles were relentless. Halftime, adjust and survive. The locker room buzzed with tension. Rachel was fuming, glaring at her cleats. Laura sat quietly, sketching formations in her notebook. Coach Langford didn't mince words. First half shows you two things: pressure and overconfidence can destroy talent. Rachel, your spark is useless if it burns the team. Laura, you're brilliant, but you need your voice heard more. Fix it now. Rachel swallowed. Laura's eyes met hers. Silent acknowledgement. They had a lot to learn tonight. Second half overtime looms. Florida State came out pressing even harder. UNC fought, each pass deliberate, each touch calculated. Laura orchestrated every move: short passes, triangles, lateral rotations, keeping the midfield just enough ahead of the Seminoles' press. In the 63rd minute, Rachel found a pocket and unleashed a curling strike from 25 yards. Goal! Davis Hitch scores! UNC equalizes! The stadium erupted. Rachel screamed into the night, arms wide, while Laura allowed herself a brief smile. One goal each, one bright moment for each sister. Florida State, undeterred, answered quickly. 2 minutes later, their striker broke through on a counter. Talia Brooks dived, parried, and saved only for the rebound to find another Seminole forward. Goal! Florida State retakes the lead. UNC pressed desperately in the final minutes. Rachel ran herself ragged, chasing every ball, tackling, dribbling, attempting crosses, pleading with the referee for fouls that never came. UNC pressing its frantic, chaotic, all or nothing. Finally, the whistle blew for full time. 2-2. Overtime. Overtime, the gut punch. Fatigue hung heavy. Legs were lead, lungs screamed, hearts thumped. UNC and FSU both exchanged opportunities. Laura intercepted 3 dangerous passes, distributing cleverly, her voice hoarse but commanding. Rachel delivered a perfect cross in the 98th minute. Jayla Torres met it, but the header rattled the crossbar. So close, Tar Heels nearly snatched the lead. Florida State capitalized moments later. A through ball split UNC's defense. Laura sprinted back but collided with a teammate mid-tackle. The Seminole striker slotted it past Talia. Goal! Florida State wins it in overtime. Heartbreak at Dorrance Field. Rachel fell to the ground, hands gripping the turf, chest heaving. Tears blurred her vision. Laura dropped to her knees beside her, fingers digging into the grass. She had orchestrated everything, saved the team countless times, but it wasn't enough. Locker room, silence, and reflection. The ride home was heavy, the bus quieter than ever. Rachel's anger simmered into guilt. Laura's mind replayed every interception, every pass, every opportunity she'd orchestrated but gone unappreciated. Addie Grant broke the silence. Lose as a unit, kids. We fought, we learned. We'll do better, I promise. Coach Langford's voice, calm but cutting, echoed in the twins' ears. You can play like stars or you can play like a team. Tonight, neither one. Learn from it. Rachel glanced at Laura. Next time we'll win, right? Laura squeezed her hand briefly. Next time we'll be smarter. And in that quiet, in the shadows of the lights, both sisters understood the brutal truth. Being seen wasn't enough. Tonight, they had to be indispensable. Final score, UNC 2, Florida State 3, OT. Record, 3-3-0. The twins trudged into the night, exhausted, bruised, and burning with resolve. They were raw, they were learning, and they were not finished. Chapter 5. Fault Lines. The bus pulled into Blacksburg, Virginia. Under a pale, midweek sky, fog hung low over Lane Stadium's practice fields, clinging to the edges like warning tape. UNC had been bruised, both physically and emotionally, after their Florida State loss. Rachel sat alone in the back, hoodie pulled up, staring at the passing trees. Every twist and turn of the road mirrored the chaos she felt inside. She hadn't slept properly since the OT heartbreak. She'd overplayed, overreached, and now she was wondering if the team would forgive her for her ego. Laura sat across the aisle, notebook open, scribbling formations and spacing adjustments. She didn't look up. She didn't need to. The silence between them was thick, but not uncomfortable, more like a shared acknowledgement of responsibility. Addie Grant, sitting in the front, gave no pep talk. She just stared out the window, shoulders squared, calculating. Even in her senior fatigue, the captain exuded a quiet confidence that seemed impossible to shake. Virginia Tech first test. Warm-ups were brisk but tense. The Hokies were scrappy, pressing with aggression, but not technically elite. Still, UNC wasn't sharp. Rachel got her name called for the starting lineup initially, but Coach Langford had something else in mind. Before kickoff, she pulled Rachel aside. "Sit this one," Langford said, voice calm but firm. "You need to reset. Let the team breathe without trying to carry it yourself." Rachel's chest tightened. "Bench? Really?" "You'll play when it matters," Langford said. "Trust me." Rachel slumped to the bench. Laura adjusted her ponytail and took a deep breath. This was her moment. "Kickoff, UNC facing Virginia Tech on a brisk Chapel Hill night," the announcer's voice rang out. Midfield command. Laura emerges. From the first whistle, Laura was everywhere. She read VT's movements like a map, intercepted passes, and orchestrated the Tar Heel attacks. Mira Delaney rotated beside her, forming the central midfield spine UNC had lacked in the Florida State disaster. In the 28th minute, Vermont broke through on the left. Laura slid in, body angled, and intercepted the pass cleanly. She immediately threaded a pass to Blake Townsend, who fired low to Jayla Torres. Jayla struck saved by the keeper. The rebound fell to Rachel, who cheered from the bench instead of acting. UNC's bench buzzing, but Rachel Davis-Hitch won't see the ball this time, the announcer noted. By halftime, UNC was up 1-0. Laura had dominated possession, dictated tempo, and quietly dictated a lesson. Control beats chaos. Halftime tensions surfacing. The locker room smelled of sweat, tape, and uncertainty. Some starters whispered about how Rachel needed to calm down. Bench players whispered about how she always got credit for moments that weren't hers. Langford walked in, eyes sweeping the room. The game isn't about individuals. It's about the team. Rachel is learning what it means to wait. Laura is learning what it means to lead. And all of you, she added, scanning the seniors and juniors alike, need to remember why you wear this jersey. Do it for each other, not for applause. Laura exhaled slowly, shoulders easing. Rachel sat with clenched fists, thinking about the next time she would get on the field. Second half. A draw and fractures. Virginia Tech pressed after the break. UNC held firm but lacked cutting edge. Blake Townsend had a one-on-one chance, pushed wide. Talia Brooks made a sprawling save in the 78th minute to keep the lead. But VT equalized in the 88th, a curling shot from outside the box that slipped past Brooks's fingertips. Goal! Hokies tie it at 1-1 with just minutes to go. The whistle blew. Final, UNC 1, Virginia Tech 1. Rachel's frustration boiled over. On the bus ride back, she muttered under her breath, "Why even let me sit if this is what happens?" Some teammates heard. Whispers started to circulate, cracks forming between bench and starters, between talent and ego. Boston College, a loss to chew on. 2 days later, UNC faced Boston College at home. The stands were loud, chants echoing off the empty halls of Dorrance. Rachel started on the bench again. Laura took the field, cool, collected, her eyes scanning, directing, correcting. BC pressed aggressively. UNC's midfield held, but fatigue and lingering tension showed. Rachel watched from the sidelines as a sloppy pass from Gwen Naylor allowed a BC winger through. Goal! Eagles take the lead early in the second half. UNC fought back, Blake Townsend striking twice but blocked. Rachel clenched her jaw, fist tight on the bench. Laura shouted instructions, gesturing for tighter spacing, more pressure, but the clock ran out. Final, UNC 1, Boston College 2. The locker room was heavy, simmering with blame and disappointment. Some starters muttered under their breath about bench players and unfair decisions. Some bench players felt the resentment from not being trusted. Rachel's absence had become a focal point. Her fire had flipped into division. Locker room fracture lines. Coach Langford stood in the center, surveying the room. "I see the cracks," she said, calm but cutting. "Now decide, do you let them define you, or do you fix them?" Laura's eyes met Rachel's across the room. Silent acknowledgement passed between them. Laura was becoming a leader, and Rachel had to learn to temper herself. Addie sighed. "Let's remember why we're here. If we don't, the rest of the season will chew us up." Rachel stared at the floor. "I'm not done," she muttered. Laura knelt beside her. "I know, but right now you're watching. That's the lesson." And in that moment, the twin sisters realized this season wouldn't just test skill. It would test patience, ego, leadership, and trust, every fault line in the team's foundation exposed under pressure. Record 3-4-1. Next up, Notre Dame, ranked #10, versus Clemson. The first fractures had appeared, and if they weren't mended, the season could crumble entirely. Chapter 6, Redemption Arc, and sort of. The cold air in South Bend had a different kind of bite, sharp, unforgiving, almost metallic. The kind that made every breath sting your lungs and every mistake feel louder. The bus hissed to a stop in the Notre Dame athletics lot, and the Tar Heels spilled out in silence. No jokes, no music, no chatter, just the sound of cleats knocking against pavement and the steady rhythm of focused breathing. Coach Langford stood at the front of the group, hands in her jacket pockets. "They're ranked 10th, she said evenly. "They're fast, they're organized, and they think you're a soft touch after 2 bad results." She paused, eyes scanning the group, stopping briefly on Rachel, who stared straight ahead, jaw set. Prove them wrong. Pre-match, the calm before the storm. In the locker room beneath Alumni Stadium, fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Laura stood at her locker, running her fingers over her shin guards, whispering to herself the same words she'd repeated since childhood. Read before you react. Move before they expect. Rachel laced her boots in silence. It had been a week since the Boston College loss, and the sting of being benched still burned. But something had shifted, quieter fire, less noise. She didn't storm through drills this week. She just worked. Laura noticed, and for the first time in weeks, she felt proud instead of worried. Talia Brooks slammed her gloves together and grinned. "All right, Heels, time to ruin someone's ranking." Addie Grant nodded. "Time to play like Carolina again." First half controlled chaos. "Welcome to South Bend, Indiana. Tonight, the number 10 ranked Notre Dame Fighting Irish host the visiting North Carolina Tar Heels, a rivalry with deep NCAA roots." From the opening whistle, UNC's shape was different. Laura sat deep in front of the backline, dictating tempo. Her calmness spread outward. Mira Delaney pressed higher, Hani Keller checked back intelligently, and Addie and Reina Osei locked down the center. Notre Dame tried to pull UNC apart with diagonal switches and rapid transitions, but Laura read every move like a chess master. She intercepted passes before they formed, slid into tackles with clean precision, and called out rotations. "Laura Davis Hitch, the freshman, is playing beyond her years tonight," the commentator said as she broke up another play in the 22nd minute. Rachel watched from the bench, hands clasped between her knees. She wasn't frustrated this time, just ready. In the 36th minute, a Notre Dame forward curled a shot from distance. Save! Talia Brooks with a fingertip stop to keep it 0-0. The half ended scoreless, but for the first time all year, UNC looked like the better team. Halftime coach Langford's quiet fire. In the cramped visitor locker room, steam rising from water bottles, Coach Langford stood in front of her players. "This," she said, "is who we're supposed to be. Composed, relentless, collective. No one's trying to be the hero. You're playing for each other." She turned to Laura. "Keep controlling the rhythm." Then to Talia. "Keep them scared." And then, almost unexpectedly, she looked at Rachel. "Warm up. You'll go on when it's time." Rachel blinked. Just a nod. No smile. No smirk. She grabbed her jacket and jogged down the tunnel, her heart hammering in rhythm with the chance above. Second half, the edge of glory. Notre Dame came out firing. Their right winger beat Izzy Montrose down the flank and sent a cross curling toward the 6-yard box. Shot! Brooks denies it again, point blank. UNC countered immediately. Mira Delaney to Laura, Laura to Hani Keller, who held the ball up beautifully before slipping it wide to Serena Patel. Cross blocked, corner kick. The Tar Heels started to believe. By the 70th minute, the match was still 0-0. Fatigue set in, tempers flared, the crowd roared every Notre Dame counterattack. Then came Langford's voice from the sideline. "Rachel, you're in, right wing. Play free, but play smart." The return. Rachel jogged onto the field in the 74th minute, the stadium lights painting everything in a hard white glow. She exhaled. No words, no thoughts, just rhythm. Her first touch was clean. Her second, daring. She took on the Irish left back, step over, burst, cross narrowly missed by Keller. The bench leapt anyway. The freshman Davis Hitch making her mark already. That's the kind of spark UNC has been missing. Laura shouted from the midfield, "Keep going, Rach." In the 84th minute, UNC earned a throw-in deep in Irish territory. Mira lobbed it to Rachel, who one-touched it to Laura. Laura's return pass split two defenders perfectly, threading Rachel into the box. Time slowed. Keeper off her line. Rachel's left foot drew back and struck. Goal! Rachel Davis Hitch, the freshman, redeems herself in South Bend. UNC bench exploded. Players flooded the sidelines, screaming, fists in the air. Rachel sprinted toward Laura, who met her halfway, arms wide. For a moment, the tension of the last few weeks vanished, replaced by the raw, electric joy of sisters finding each other again. Final minutes. Holding the line, Notre Dame threw everything forward. Addie Grant blocked 2 shots. Reina Osei cleared a third off the line. And in stoppage time, one last corner, chipped in, punched clear by Brooks. The whistle blows. UNC shocks Notre Dame 1-0. Players collapsed to the turf, breathless, disbelieving. Coach Langford smiled just barely. "Better," she said as she walked past them. "That's Carolina soccer." Aftermath. Redemption in shades. On the flight home, the bus quieted into a peaceful hum. Rachel leaned against the window, eyes half closed. Laura nudged her gently. "Feels good, huh?" Rachel smiled faintly. "You mean winning?" Laura shook her head. "No, learning." Rachel laughed softly. "Don't start quoting Coach Langford." "Hey, she's not wrong." Rachel looked out the window again, watching the clouds below. "Redemption feels weird." Laura grinned. "That's why it's only sort of." Record 4-4-1. Next up, Clemson, Syracuse. The spark was back, fragile, flickering, but alive. The Tar Heels had found something in South Bend that wasn't just about victory. It was about belief. And for the first time all season, they walked off the bus at Chapel Hill as a team again. Chapter 7. The Weight of Winning. The sun rose over Chapel Hill like a victory banner. After weeks of doubt and fractured chemistry, the locker room finally carried something new. Laughter. Small, cautious, but laughter all the same. Laura tied her boots at her locker, humming softly. Across from her, Rachel leaned back on the bench, scrolling through headlines on her phone. UNC shocks #10 Notre Dame freshman twins lead Carolina revival. The double helix Davis Hitch sisters unravel Irish defense. Rachel grinned. "They finally got our nickname right." Laura rolled her eyes. "We didn't choose that name." "Doesn't matter," Rachel said. "It's cool." Laura smirked, lacing tighter. "You just like being first in the headline." Rachel shrugged. "And you like pretending you don't." Clemson at home. A new pulse. The crowd was louder that Sunday afternoon at Dorrance Field. Banners fluttered. The pep band rattled the air with fight songs. It wasn't a sellout, but the student section was alive. Welcome back to Chapel Hill. The Tar Heels, fresh off an upset win over Notre Dame, host the Clemson Tigers, and it's the freshman duo everyone's talking about. From kickoff, UNC looked different, confident, fluid. Laura's presence anchored everything. She sat just above the back line, distributing with calm precision, orchestrating the rhythm of play. Rachel buzzed down the wing like a live wire stepovers, diagonal runs, unpredictable bursts. In the 23rd minute, Mira Delaney slipped a clever ball through to Hani Keller, who one-timed it across the box. Rachel arrived like lightning. Goal! Rachel Davis Hitch again. That's 2-2. Rachel wheeled away toward the corner flag, arms spread wide, Laura sprinting to meet her. The announcer's voice cut through the cheers. The double helix strikes again. The chemistry between these sisters is rewriting Carolina's season. By halftime, UNC led 2-0. The team that once cracked under pressure now looked composed and dangerous. Halftime, the lesson. In the locker room, the energy was electric, but Coach Langford stayed even-keeled. "Enjoy it," she said, "but remember, winning hides mistakes. Don't let it fool you into thinking we've arrived. The work isn't done." Addie Grant nodded solemnly. "Keep the shape. Keep the hunger." Rachel leaned against her locker, sweat dripping, adrenaline fading. "We're not losing this one," she whispered to Laura. Laura smiled faintly. "Not if we keep thinking before we play." They did, and they won. Final, UNC 3, Clemson 1. Syracuse, the rise continues. 3 days later, on the road, Syracuse's stadium felt smaller but louder. Orange-clad fans chanted in unison, drums echoing across the bleachers. Laura's role grew even larger. She dictated tempo like a conductor, directing Mira, shouting adjustments, keeping everyone locked in. "Davis Hitch again, playing beyond her years," the commentator exclaimed. "It's not flashy, but it's clinical." In the 67th minute, Rachel drew 2 defenders on the flank, cut inside, and fed Keller a perfect through ball. Goal! Keller buries it. And the assist to guess who? Rachel Davis Hitch again. UNC's bench erupted. Coach Langford clapped once, a rare smile tugging at her lips. Final. UNC 2, Syracuse 0. 3 wins in a row. Momentum, chemistry, purpose. The double helix. Back home, their faces appeared on the front page of the Daily Tar Heel. The double helix, sisters who spin Carolina's future. The article quoted Langford. They complement each other's chaos. Rachel ignites, Laura stabilizes. One's the spark, the other's the spine. The twins read it together in the dining hall, pretending to be annoyed by the attention but both secretly glowing. Addie leaned over with a smirk. "Just don't let it go to your heads." Rachel laughed. "Too late?" Laura elbowed her. "She's kidding." Addie grinned. "I know. That's why I like you two. You actually care." Coach's warning. The next morning, practice ran longer than usual. The air was crisp, drills intense. Langford gathered the team mid-session. "Pride's good. Confidence is better. But arrogance," she said, pausing for effect, "is how dynasties die." The words hit Rachel hard. She knew Langford wasn't just talking to the room. After practice, Laura stayed behind collecting cones. Langford approached quietly. "She's got talent," Langford said, "but she'll need you to keep her grounded." Laura nodded. "I know." Langford's eyes softened. "And you'll need her to keep you brave." Jayla's fall. The win streak rolled into another week, and then the gut punch hit. It was supposed to be a light scrimmage before the road trip to Louisville. Jayla Torres, the senior striker, went to make a routine turn near midfield. Her cleat caught in the turf. The scream was immediate. Practice froze. Time froze. Holly Tran sprinted across the field with the med cart. Jayla was clutching her knee, sobbing. Talia knelt beside her, silent. Rachel dropped her water bottle and jogged over, panic on her face. Laura stayed still, hands on her hips, watching the med staff hover. She knew everyone knew it was bad. Later that afternoon, the team sat in the locker room, the hum of the air conditioner louder than words. Langford stood at the front, her voice heavy. "MRI confirms it. ACL tear, Jayla's out for the season." No one spoke. Jayla's jersey number 9 hung on the wall, still sweat-stained. Rachel's throat tightened. She's our best forward." "No," Addie said softly. "She's our heartbeat." Laura closed her eyes. "Then we carry it for her?" Langford looked at her and nodded slowly. The weight of winning. That night, under the quiet lights of Dorrance Field, Rachel and Laura stayed late after everyone else had left. Rachel juggled the ball absent-mindedly. "Why does it feel heavier now that we're finally winning?" Laura watched the wind ripple through the empty stands. "Because it means something now." Rachel stopped juggling, resting the ball under her foot. "What if it all falls apart again?" Laura smiled gently. "Then we build it back. That's what Carolina does." Rachel sighed. "You always sound like Coach Langford." "Maybe I just listen better than you." "Maybe," Rachel said, looking up at the floodlights, their white glare reflected in her eyes. "You're starting to sound like the captain instead." Record, 6-4-1. Next up, NC State, Miami, Pitt. Momentum is a strange thing. It lifts you higher but makes the ground below seem farther away. And for the first time, UNC felt the altitude. Chapter 8, Carolina in Crisis. The quiet after Jayla's injury felt louder than any crowd. The locker room wasn't broken, not yet, but the energy had changed. Where there used to be laughter, now there were long silences, tight nods, players scrolling on their phones just to avoid each other's eyes. Coach Langford didn't lecture. She didn't need to. Everyone understood. When you lose your heartbeat, the rhythm falters. NC State, the Derby of Silence. The bus ride to Raleigh was subdued. Even the freshmen, who usually blasted music from the back seats, stayed hushed. Rain streaked the windows. Rachel leaned against the glass, earbuds in, staring at the passing pine trees. Laura sat beside her, flipping through scouting notes, murmuring formations to herself. "You can relax, you know," Rachel said softly. Laura didn't look up. "I am relaxed." "No, you're calculating." Laura exhaled. "Somebody has to be." We're live from Dale Soccer Stadium in Raleigh, North Carolina, the Tobacco Road Derby. UNC versus NC State. Emotions always high in this one. Kickoff. Without Jayla, UNC's frontline lacked that edge, that forward who could turn half chances into gold. Rachel played higher than usual, but her touch was heavy, her decision-making rushed. Laura shouted adjustments from midfield, but the rhythm was fractured. Passes went astray. Confidence bled out like a slow leak. In the 39th minute, North Carolina State broke through. Counterattack. Fletcher down the left, crosses low, deflected, once, rebound, goal. NC State takes the lead. Silence from the Carolina bench. Rachel slammed her hand into the turf. By the 70th minute, Langford had made all her subs, pushing for an equalizer. Rachel tried a curling shot from 25 yards wide. Mira Delaney missed a sitter inside 6 yards. Final whistle here in Raleigh. NC State 1, North Carolina 0. The Tar Heels' win streak comes to an end. No one spoke on the bus ride back. Only the hum of the wheels on asphalt. Falling apart quietly. 2 days later, practice turned sour. It started with a bad pass in rondo. Rachel lost focus, miscontrolled, and Talia barked, "You can't do that in a game." Rachel shot back, "Then stop walking during drills." "Say that again?" "Stop walking." The entire session froze. Coach Langford's whistle cut through the tension. "Enough." Everyone backed away, breathing hard, eyes down. Langford stood between them, jaw tight. "We lose as a team or we lose everything. Pick one." When practice ended, Rachel stormed off without stretching. Laura stayed behind, juggling a ball to calm herself, each soft tap echoing in the empty field. Miami, the Heat. UNC looking to rebound here in Coral Gables after a tough loss in Raleigh. The Florida Heat felt like it was pressing down on their lungs. Sweat poured, communication faltered. In the 12th minute, a misread between Laura and center back Zoe Calder led to disaster. Intercepted. Miami counter, long ball over the top. She's onside, shot, save. Holly Tran dove full stretch, fingertips pushing it wide. "Nice one, Hall," Laura shouted. But 10 minutes later, Miami struck again. Goal! Hurricanes take the lead, and Carolina's backline caught sleeping again. The Tar Heels looked shaken. Rachel tried to rally them, clapping, shouting encouragement, but frustration leaked through her voice. "Let's go, people! Wake up!" By halftime, they trailed 1-0. In the locker room, the air conditioner hummed loud over the silence. Coach Langford looked around. "You can't fix this with slogans," she said quietly. "You fix it with trust. If you don't believe in each other, you're not a team. You're just 11 jerseys." No one answered. Final score. Miami 2, UNC 0. Late night at Dorrance Field. That night, the field lights glowed empty again. Rachel sat in the middle circle alone, knees up, still in her travel sweats. The Crickets were the only crowd left. Laura appeared out of the dark, holding 2 Gatorades. "Thought you might still be here," she said. Rachel took one, cracked it open. "I'm fine." "You always say that when you're not." Rachel didn't answer, after a long silence. "I just don't get it. We had it, Laura. For like 3 games we had it. Then it's gone." Laura sat beside her. "It's not gone. It's just buried under everything we haven't said." Rachel frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" "You're angry. I'm scared. Addie's tired. Everyone's pretending. But nobody's saying it out loud." Rachel looked down. "I don't know how to fix it." "Neither do I," Laura said softly. But maybe that's the point. We're supposed to figure it out together. Pittsburgh, the breaking point. Tar Heels trying to stop a 3-game slide, but Pittsburgh's come to play tonight. From kickoff, it was chaos. UNC looked flat, disconnected, and frustrated. Rachel forced too many dribbles. Laura tried to overcompensate, covering every blade of grass. In the 53rd minute, the disaster came. UNC corner cleared out, and now here comes the counterattack. Pitt racing upfield, 3-on-2 ball to the left, crosses it header. Goal, Pittsburgh! Rachel screamed in frustration. Laura yelled for calm, but the team was unraveling in real time. Addie's passes missed. Hani snapped at Mira. Langford on the sideline was stone still, arms crossed. Then, in the 79th minute, Rachel dove for a ball near the sideline, late clipping Pitt's right back. That's a hard challenge, and the referee's reaching for the card. Red card. Rachel Davis-Hitch is sent off. The stadium erupted in boos and jeers. Rachel stood there, disbelief flashing to anger, then regret. Langford didn't yell. She just turned away, hands on her head. UNC finished the match with 10 players and another loss. Final? Pitt 2, UNC 0. Aftermath. Rachel sat alone in the locker room after the others had gone. Her red card lay on the bench beside her, crumpled in her hand like a confession. Laura appeared at the door, eyes soft. "I shouldn't have gone in like that," Rachel whispered. "I lost it." Laura sat beside her, voice low. "You didn't lose it. You just forgot who you are." Rachel looked up, tears barely held back. "Who's that?" "The kid who made me believe we could win again." They sat in silence. The overhead light buzzed softly. Somewhere outside, the groundskeeper locked the gate. The Reckoning. Monday morning. Film review. The room was ice cold, not from the AC, but from the mood. Langford stood by the screen, remote in hand. She didn't raise her voice once. "Watch this," she said, rewinding a clip of miscommunication between Laura and Addie. "No talk, no signals. That's not a skill issue. That's a trust issue." Click. Rachel's red card tackle replayed. Over and over. "That's not leadership," Langford said quietly. "That's emotion running wild." She turned off the projector. "We're better than this, but not right now, so we fix it or we fold." No one spoke. One last spark. That night, as the team left the locker room, Laura caught Rachel's arm. "You know what Coach meant, right?" Rachel nodded slowly. "Yeah, I just don't know if she still believes in me." Laura squeezed her shoulder. "Then we make her remember." They stood in the hallway, the smell of turf and sweat lingering, echoes of cleats clacking away down the tunnel. Outside, the Carolina blue sky was giving way to night deep, bruised, uncertain, and somewhere in that darkness, a fire still burned. Record 6-7-1. Next up, Duke Wake Forest, Florida State. 3 straight losses, morale fractured, confidence drained. But sometimes the only way forward is through the ruins. Chapter 9. Rival Blood. The sky over Chapel Hill burned electric blue. You could feel it from blocks away, the hum, the ache, the anticipation. Duke Week. Every cleat polished, every word charged. No one needed to say it. This one matters. The rivalry wasn't just tradition, it was religion. The crowd began pouring in hours before kickoff, student section already singing, blue flags rippling under the stadium lights, ESPN trucks hummed behind the stands, cameras angled, commentators rehearsed their intros. Welcome to Dorrance Field in Chapel Hill. It's rivalry night, North Carolina versus Duke. Emotions, history, bragging rights, you name it, this match has it all. The calm before it starts. Coach Langford stood in front of the whiteboard, marker uncapped, eyes steady. No shouting, just a quiet conviction that filled the locker room heavier than noise. "We've lost ourselves these last few weeks," she said. "Tonight, you find your way back. Play free. Play proud. Play together." Her gaze swept the room over Addie's calm stare, Mira's clenched jaw, Rachel's twitching knee, Laura's folded hands. "Rivalries don't forgive," Langford said softly. "They reveal." Starting Tellum, GK, Talia Brooks. Def, Carmen Cho Addie Grant C. Reina Ose Izzy Montrose. Mid, Laura Davis-Hitch, Mira Delaney, Rachel Davis-Hitch. FWD, Peyton LaRoche, Hani Keller, Kenzie Hale. Rachel turned to Hani as they walked down the tunnel. "You nervous?" Hani smiled faintly. "A little." "Good. It means it matters. Kick off fire and smoke." Under the lights in Chapel Hill, Tar Heels in Carolina blue, Blue Devils in white, and we're underway. The first 5 minutes were chaos, crunching tackles, dueling chants, every touch greeted with cheers or boos. Rachel darted forward, pressing hard. Laura sat deep, orchestrating triangles with Mira, her passes clean and surgical. Laura Davis-Hitch, the freshman anchor, distributing like a veteran early. Duke pressed high, dangerous on the wings. Carmen Cho shut down one break with a sliding tackle that drew roars from the home fans. Big recovery by Cho. That's championship-level defending. But the tension cracked in the 22nd minute. A Duke forward found space between Reina and Addie too quick, too clever, and slotted low past Talia. Goal, Duke. The Blue Devils strike first, and the Tar Heels are stunned. 1-0. Talia slammed her gloves into the turf. Addie barked orders, rallying the line. Rachel bit her lip. Langford didn't move, just crossed her arms, calm in the storm. Reactions and ripples. Rachel's frustration burned hot. She started forcing plays, dribbles into double coverage, shots from too far out. Mira caught her arm after another turnover. "Hey, breathe. Find the flow again." Rachel's jaw clenched. "I'm trying." "You're pressing. Don't. Let the game come to you." Meanwhile, Laura grew into the match, sliding between lines, intercepting passes, switching play with elegance. Reina backed her up, reading danger early, shouting commands like a seasoned veteran. "Laura, left shoulder, track the runner." "I see her." For the first time in weeks, their connection felt alive again. The equalizer. 37th minute. Mira dispossessed Duke's midfielder and fed Laura. One touch, forward to Rachel. Davis-Hitch threads it through to Kenzie Hale. She's in the box, crosses Hani Keller. Thud. Goal. Keller buries it. North Carolina equalizes. The freshman delivers under pressure. The stadium exploded. Hani's teammates mobbed her near the corner flag, the crowd chanting her name. Rachel wrapped her arms around her, laughing, breathless. "Told you it'd matter." 1-1. Halftime. Locker room noise, boots thudding, bottles popping, the low rhythm of belief starting to return. Coach Langford looked around. "That's the team I know. You're dictating again. But don't chase this game. Make them chase you." She nodded to Laura. "Keep their tempo down. You're the metronome." Then to Rachel. "You've got the freedom. Use it smart." Rachel nodded. No words. Just purpose. Second half. The fire rises. We're back underway here in Chapel Hill. 1-1 the score, tension thick as ever. Both teams came out flying. Duke swung crosses dangerously into the box. Talia punched two clear, Addie cleared another off the line with a desperate slide. Grant again, the captain laying her body on the line. At midfield, Mira and Laura worked magic triangles, 1-2s, rhythm, poise. But in the 63rd minute, Duke earned a free kick just outside the box. This is dangerous territory. The shot curled, dipped clang, off the bar. Gasps. Talia smothered the rebound. Rachel turned and screamed toward her goal. "Let's go, Talia!" The crowd surged behind her, chanting her name now too. Play-by-play frenzy. 75th minute, it's all North Carolina now. Laura switched play to Izzy. Long ball to Kenzie on the wing, she cut inside, beat two defenders. Hale still with it, shoots blocked, rebound Rachel Davis-Hitch. Her shot rattled the post. Off the woodwork, inches away from glory. Rachel threw her head back, hands on her hips, grinning through exhaustion. "Keep it coming," Addie shouted from the back. Final minutes. Heartbeats. 85th minute. Laura intercepted another ball, threaded a pass through three Duke shirts like threading silk. What a pass. Davis-Hitch splitting the lines again. Kenzie latched onto it, sprinted down the right cross low toward the near post Rachel Dove. The ball missed her by inches. Oh, so close. You can feel that a goal's coming. But Duke's keeper held strong. 91st minute. Final chance. Laura on the corner. The whistle blew as she sent it in high, curling, dangerous. Reina got ahead on it. Deflected. Chaos. Still loose in the box, shot saved. And there's the final whistle. It ends 1-1, but what a battle. After the whistle, players dropped to their knees, exhausted. Sweat, tears, relief. Rachel stood hands on hips, chest heaving. Laura walked over slowly, eyes meeting hers. For once, no tension, just a quiet understanding. They didn't win, but they hadn't folded either. Rachel offered a fist bump. "Not bad, partner." Laura smirked. "You finally passed the ball. Don't get used to it." They laughed, the sound soft but real. Addie joined them, laying a hand on each of their shoulders. "That's the team I want to see every week," she said. "Hungry, alive, dangerous." Hani walked up too. Shy smile. "I can't feel my legs." "Worth it," Rachel grinned. Post-game. Coach Langford faced the reporters afterward, expression unreadable. "Proud of the fight," she said. "Proud of how they responded. This was more than a rivalry match. It was a reminder of who we can be." Laura watched from the tunnel, hearing her name mentioned, Davis Hitch twins finding their rhythm again, and felt something settle deep inside her. It wasn't glory. It wasn't victory. It was balance. That night, the twins walked back from the stadium together, Doran's lights dimming behind them. The air was cool, crisp, full of possibility. Rachel kicked at a loose pebble. "I missed this. Feeling like us." Laura smiled faintly. "Then let's hold on to it. Until next time?" Until next time? They didn't need to say more. The season was still bruised, still uncertain, but for the first time in weeks, Carolina Blue didn't feel heavy. It felt alive. Final. North Carolina, 1 Duke 1. Record 6-7-2. Rivalries don't forgive, but sometimes they remind you what's worth fighting for. Chapter 10, Bruised and Blue. The season had taken on the smell of laundry detergent and exhaustion. October at the tail end of classes felt different than August. The air was thinner with commitments, the nights shorter, the recovery radios silent as players slept with textbooks and tape rolls on their bedside tables. The crest on the jersey seemed to carry more freight now, like an heirloom someone asked you to hold while they went away. Rachel could feel it in her calves, in the little hum of her knees, in the way the pitch at Dorrance felt smaller and meaner. She'd expected the grind to be hard. She hadn't expected it to feel personal, like a repeated question you never answered right. Laura felt it more like arithmetic minutes adding up into fatigue, percentages dropping on pass completion, sprint counts dwindling on the GPS report. Where Rachel heard a crowd, Laura measured the spaces. They stepped onto the bus to Louisville in near silence. The mood was a low, compact thing that fit inside the hum of the engine. Addie sat near the front and watched players' faces dim in the reflection of the window. "We don't have to like it," she said quietly when the bus hit an interstate lull, "but we've got to live it. Louisville rain that finds the bones." Louisville's stadium was wind and concrete and a crowd that smelled like old rivalries. Weather forecasts had promised drizzle something thin and insistent that soaked the kit and made every touch slide. UNC lined up in the same 4-3-3 they'd worn all season. Talia between the sticks, Carmen and Izzy on the flanks, Addie and Raina the center pair, Laura, Mira, Rachel the midfield spine. Up top, Kenzie and Hani. The whistle shrieked and the game began with the cat and eye of a mechanical precision that only early fall allows. Tackles measured, pressing structured, wings attacking sequentially. In the 11th minute, Louisville played a classic counter. Their winger peeled off the back shoulder of Izzy, a long ball precision, and the striker met it with a first-time finish. The ball settled in the far corner before Talia had time to blink. Goal! Louisville strikes early with a textbook counter. That's 1-0, and UNC looks cut open. Rachel swore under her breath and pushed forward like she could muscle fate into changing its mind. She wanted to tilt the game. She wanted a moment that made the cameras say her name. But wanting didn't make the pitch bend. They kept conceding space down the channels, and the drizzle made every pass a negotiation with the wet. Langford's voice was low at halftime. "They're hitting the angles we didn't prepare for. You're chasing ghosts when you try to fight shadow. Find me balance." Laura had been the one doing that balance work, thread passes, stabilizing under pressure, but tonight even she had the look of someone with too many boxes filled in their head. Her pinged passes were crisp, but the team's finishes were softness in the box that turned into corners rather than danger. Damage came again in the 58th minute. A misplayed touch from Rachel at halfway led to a Louisville turnover. They cut quickly, 1-2, another finish slowed by Talia, but tucked home from the rebound. Save! Oh, rebound! Goal! Louisville doubles up on UNC? 2 down. The crowd grew louder in the rain, a small army of umbrellas applauding the collapse. Rachel's legs were hollow with the kind of fatigue that lives inside the bones. She tried to force a run, to drag a defender out the way. Twice, she misread promising flick-ons. On one sequence, she dribbled into a dead lane, and a Louisville midfielder nipped the ball through to a runner. It looked like hubris on film. She knew the replay would show it as a mistake. The Tar Heels clawed back a consolation in the 78th minute. A set play, a well-worked corner, Raina towering and nodding it down for Blake Townsend's thud into the net. The bench exhaled, but exhaling doesn't fix repeats. Final: Louisville 2, North Carolina 1. They walked back into the locker room to quiet that felt older than any of them. Locker room counting days. The silence after a loss isn't angry. It is the stunned sort of quiet that counts up time like a ledger. Seniors sat like small islands. Addie peeled off her tape and looked at the scene where 2016-2020 should be etched and wasn't. Carmen sat with her head not speaking. Someone asked, tentatively, "If we don't fix this, what then?" Sammy Kruger, who'd been a steady presence all season, clicked her tongue and said, "Then we've got to decide who we are so the next group can know." The seniors were counting down in ways that were both practical and painfully human. Cap and gown timelines, NWSL meeting drafts, internships, grad school essays. The season had started as a 4-year story. Now it felt like the last paragraph for some of them and the entire prologue for others. Rachel left to an empty bench and sat with her head between her knees. The bench was cold. She'd been taught always to fill the silence with action. Now the silence filled her. Laura found her there later. "Hey," she said, sliding down to the bench beside her twin. "You okay?" Rachel laughed once, a brittle sound. "Do you ever think you weren't built for this?" The question hung. Laura had the answer in her chest, the practical one. The truth, the grind strips you down to a question, then asks for a better answer. She didn't try to mince poetry. "I think you're built," Laura said, "but not built for only the shiny parts, built for the work that doesn't fit in highlight reels." Rachel looked sideways at her, the lights above making the small hope in her sister's eyes look like a white flag. "Maybe," she said, "but I thought the grind would look like glory sometimes." Laura pressed her palm against Rachel's back. "It does, sometimes. It just pays tuition to the other times." Georgia Tech. Irresistible fatigue. 3 days later in Atlanta, the field felt like a wet drum. Georgia Tech played a horizontal game calm, repetitive, hungry. Exactly what breaks a team running on fumes. The Tar Heels wore the same formation. The moves were the same. But the edges that showed up against Duke and Clemson, the small passes and the jogs that created space, they weren't there. Each pass looked heavier, each run shorter. Early on, Georgia Tech's number 7 spun a throw-in into the box and sneaked a volley that Talia flung herself at, fingers pushing the ball off the line. The rebound was a scramble. UNC survived the scare, but not the pattern. In the 31st minute, Laura threaded a small pass up the middle, the kind of pass that said she could still see 50 seconds ahead of everyone else. It split 2 Tech shirts and put Kenzie into space. Kenzie forced a dangerous cross. Hani's header just over. A small rebuke, a near miss. The team needed moments like that to breathe. But Georgia Tech's backline clogged the channels, and their press left UNC staring at each other instead of playing. Then, fatigue stitched an error for them in the 55th minute. Addie, trying to shepherd a line overwhelmed, misjudged speed on a second ball. Georgia Tech's forward latched on, cut back, and finished. Goal! Georgia Tech with the opener, UNC trailing yet again. The bench erupted in curses to a steam it couldn't vent on the field. Rachel threw her arms in the air, then grabbed her head, asking the unanswerable, why does it always come when it matters most? By the 74th minute, UNC tried to rally. Laura's passing had been the single reliable constant of the first hour. She increased her tempo, tried to sling diagonal balls to Rachel, tried to stretch a defense that had already contracted. Rachel sprinted for one that arrived just at the edge of the box, but she miscontrolled it, letting it bob away from her foot into a Tech defender's path. Turnover, and now Tech comes back the other way, the announcer said, the tone cutting. The game bled out for UNC. Georgia Tech added one more clinical strike in stoppage time off a set piece. The final whistle was a small, merciless thing. Final, Georgia Tech 2, North Carolina 0. 2 losses in 4 days. The numbers on Coach Langford's tablet blinked like a judgment. Press conference, the future. The post-game press conference felt like a meeting in a room where everything was being cataloged. Mistakes, minutes, meta-light optimism. Reporters asked the expected questions, soft enough to pass as concern. Coach, after these 2 disappointing results, where does the program go from here? Langford's answer was low and factual. We train, we analyze, we correct errors. A reporter younger, hungry, pivoted. Coach, the freshmen, particularly Laura Davis-Hitch, have shown a remarkable level of composure. Do you see her as a future leader for this program? Langford's eyes went briefly to the back of the room where Laura sat next to Mira, tape on her fingers, hair still a little damp. In the silence, the way she answered felt like a small, hot truth. Laura's got something, Langford said. She reads the game, she speaks when it matters. She's not just the future, she's part of the present. We're building around her. The line made the rounds. Television replayed the clip that evening. She's not just the future, she's part of the present. A talk radio host used the line the next morning. Davis-Hitch, the future at UNC, scrolled across the sports crawl. For Laura, the words sat like a stone in her chest. It was not triumph so much as a new weight. Being called the future meant other people were already counting on her. It meant the option of being invisible was gone. When Rachel saw the clip later that night, the taglines, the social media highlights, a hot slurry of feelings rose in her. Pride, of course, and also an old, familiar churn of jealousy. That flicker lasted a breath and then folded under a new worry. Had the team traded one kind of pressure for another? Late night 2 sisters. 2 questions. That night, they didn't sleep well. The hotel lights dimmed, but the minds were loud. Rachel lay awake, thinking of the miscontrolled pass in Atlanta and how small the margins had become. She imagined future seasons where every mistake loaned you a sentence in the paper, the grind of being under scrutiny. Laura scribbled lines in her notebook, exacting diagrams of where players opened up when the pitch got compressed. The future she'd been assigned by a reporter was quiet and carefully colored in pencil. She didn't know how to carry that future lightly. At 3 a.m., the 2 of them found themselves on the hotel balcony, the city smeared below them by rain and the orange sodium lights of an interstate. Neither spoke for a long time. Finally, Rachel broke the silence. They called you the future today. Laura didn't look up. I heard. You okay with that? Rachel asked because she wanted to know the answer for herself as much as for her sister. Laura breathed out. It's a title. Titles make people expect things. I don't know if I'm ready for everyone's expectations. You're ready for me? Rachel said, purposefully small. Laura smiled. That's the easy part. They stood there a while longer, 2 silhouettes in the rain. The crest on their chests soaked through with that October drizzle, bruised and blue, but still stitched to their skin. Record, 6-9-2. Next up. Final ACC clash, NC State. Revenge match. The season had narrowed into its most important moment, whether they would answer as a team or break into pieces. The seniors were counting down, the underclassmen were calculating. For Rachel, the grind had begun to feel less like a promise and more like a test that might never stop asking. Laura now carried a new label from the presses, not to inflate her, but to demand more. In the cold after another pair of losses, that demand felt less like hope and more like homework. They would have to do the work. No headline could do it for them. No promise from a coach, no nickname from fans. When the sky finally cleared and dawn came slow over Chapel Hill, the only thing left to do was lace up and start again. Chapter 11. Last Stand. By the time the leaves turned copper around Dorrance Field, the season felt like it had been played in 3 lifetimes. And yet there it was. One more 90, one more chance to prove they'd learned something from the ache. The revenge match against NC State wasn't supposed to mean much. Both teams out of tournament contention, no national eyes, no implications. But inside the locker room, it meant everything. pride, identity, unfinished sentences from a loss months earlier that still clung like old bruises. Coach Langford stood at the whiteboard, marker in hand. "They embarrassed us last time," he said. His voice wasn't loud, it didn't need to be. "You've spent a season bleeding for each other. Don't waste the lesson now." Addie Grant's captain's armband lay on the bench beside her, the elastic stretched from years of wear. She'd already decided not to cry. "Let's leave this place with something that feels like us," she said, voice steady. "No speeches, just soccer." Kickoff, the noise of closure. The stadium hummed with low sunlight and the scent of wet turf. A modest crowd, students, locals, a handful of alumni, but it felt full. Seniors walked out hand in hand with family for the pre-game ceremony. Jayla Torres moved carefully on her mended knee, limping through the guard of honor, tears slick on her cheekbones. Carmen Cho kissed the crest before stepping off the sideline. And Addie stared straight ahead, her focus unshakable. When the anthem ended, Rachel and Laura shared a glance across the midfield line, an unspoken pact. Not redemption, just resolution. The whistle blew. And we're underway here at Dorrance Field, North Carolina hosting NC State final regular season match, and for some of these seniors, their last in Carolina blue. First half familiar fractures. The first 10 minutes looked like every rough game that had scarred their season. Disjointed passes. A few too many hopeful balls forward, Rachel pressed high and missed a timing cue. Laura barked for shape. Old habits die reluctantly. But the difference tonight was smaller and subtler. Effort didn't crack into frustration. It just continued. Laura sat deep, reading the tempo like she always did, Mira ahead of her organizing press traps, and Rachel drifting wide, waiting to exploit gaps. In the 23rd minute, North Carolina State found the opener. A looping corner, a flicked header, chaos at the near post. Talia got a glove, but not enough. 1-0 Wolfpack. Goal, NC State breaks through first. A messy one, but they all count. The bench clenched fists, Coach Langford just nodded. He didn't shout, he scribbled on his pad and turned away. The gesture was clear. "You know what to do." Laura took control from the restart short passes to Mira, then to Izzy, shifting the field until the rhythm began to breathe. Rachel found her groove soon after, cutting inside with a heavy first touch that she somehow recovered with a backheel feint past her marker. The crowd gasped. Kenzie Hill's shot from the ensuing cross rattled the bar. Inches away. Off the crossbar, UNC knocking on the door. At halftime, it was still 1-0. The locker room buzzed with adrenaline and fatigue. Addie knelt by the magnetic board, dragging her fingers along the backline magnets. "We're fine," she said. "We've seen worse." Then she looked at Rachel. "And if you're going to try the spectacular, make it count this time." Rachel gave a crooked grin. "Copy that, Captain." Second half, the pulse returns. They came out sharper. Laura dictated from deep like a metronome, her passes slicing diagonally into the channels. In the 54th minute, she intercepted a counter and launched a 40-yard switch to Rachel, a perfect arcing ball that kissed the air. Rachel trapped it mid-stride, burst past her defender, and whipped in a low cross. Hani Keller. Quiet, poised freshman met it first time, slotting it low past the keeper. Goal! Hani Keller, assisted by Rachel Davis-Hitch. UNC draws level, and listen to that crowd. The bench erupted. Addie punched the air. Langford didn't move except for a brief nod, the kind that said finally. The tempo turned frenetic. NC State pressed high, trying to reclaim the edge. Talia commanded her box, shouting herself hoarse. Step! Step up! She barked at her defenders, palms slicing the air. The match tilted into a deadlock end-to-end, breathless. In the 81st minute, with exhaustion setting in, UNC earned a free kick 25 yards out. Mira hovered over it, Rachel standing next to her, Laura loitering near the arc like she was disinterested. Addie shouted from the back, "Run the green line!" The practice set-piece one they'd only perfected a week ago. Mira feinted right. Rachel tapped the ball sideways, drawing the defense. Laura charged forward a ghosting run through the midfield line and struck the return pass with her left foot. It curled perfect and brutal into the top left corner. Goal! Laura Davis-Hitch, the freshman with a thunderbolt. UNC takes the lead late, and that might be the season's exclamation point. The crowd exploded. The sound folded over itself, part relief, part disbelief. Rachel tackled her sister in celebration, arms wrapping tight as they tumbled into the grass. Told you I'd make it count, she gasped, breathless with laughter. Laura grinned through the noise. And I told you I'd finish it. Final whistle closure, not completion. The last 9 minutes were a siege. NC State threw numbers forward. Talia made 2 massive saves, one full stretch to her left, another a fingertip deflection off the bar. Save! Talia Brooks denies the equalizer. When the final whistle came, it didn't sound triumphant. It sounded tired. But the scoreboard read UNC 2, North Carolina State 1. Players fell to the turf, some laughing, some crying. The seniors hugged anyone within reach. Carmen Cho took off her boots and left them neatly at midfield, her silent tradition. Addie stood in the center circle, eyes scanning the stadium as though committing it to memory. Then she turned to the twins and nodded once. That's what Carolina soccer is supposed to feel like. Rachel smiled, half-teary. Took us all year to find it. Then it was worth it, Addie said. Everything is when you finish standing. Post-game words that last. In the locker room, Coach Langford waited until the noise died down. The seniors stood shoulder to shoulder. The underclassmen, still dripping sweat, leaned against walls and benches. Langford's voice was soft. You earned that one. Not because you won, because you played with something I've been waiting all season to see. Trust. That's how you build a program. He looked at the twins then. And that's how you lead one. There were no grand speeches, no confetti, no trophies, just clapping and quiet tears and the thud of boots hitting locker floors for the last time. Jayla Torres, on crutches, hobbled over to Rachel and Laura. Keep it going next year, she said. You two, you're the spark. Just don't burn too fast. Mira hugged Laura hard. That was captain stuff tonight, she whispered. You're closer than you think. Kenzie slapped Rachel on the back. Assist machine, don't forget me when you're scoring 40 next season. Rachel smirked. Not possible. Night on the pitch. Hours later, after the crowd had gone and the lights began to dim, the Davis Hitch twins wandered back out onto the grass. It was cool and damp, full of echoes. Laura traced the penalty arc with her shoe. Rachel looked up at the scoreboard, still frozen on 2-1. Feels different when it's ours, Rachel said. Laura nodded. It's always been ours. We just forgot for a while. From the bleachers came faint voices, the seniors still laughing, packing bags, taking last photos under the lights. Addie's laugh carried clear. Rachel let out a long exhale. 8 wins, 9 losses, 2 draws. Doesn't sound great? No, Laura said, but it sounds true. They stood there until the lights went out, their silhouettes long against the turf. Somewhere above, a plane cut through the sky, maybe headed for next season. Final regular season record, 8-9-2. ACC, finish, missed tournament qualification by 1 spot. Next. Chapter, what remains after the whistle reflection, locker clean-out, lessons learned, and the quiet challenge from Coach Langford that sets up year 2. Chapter 12. What remains after the whistle? Approximately 17,000 characters. It was over before anyone could say the word over. No tears, no tantrums, no dramatic speeches. Just silence, then the slow metallic click of cleats being untied. The Tar Heels finished 8-9-2. No ACC tournament, no selection show Sunday. Just an email from the NCLA that confirmed what they already knew. UNC women's soccer season complete. The text came through on a gray morning, drizzle streaking the windows of the dorms. The group chat stayed quiet for almost an hour before Kenzie finally sent one message. We go again next year. No one replied. Not because they disagreed, just because it hurt too much to admit she was right. 1. Locker clean-out. The smell of turf and liniment hung in the air. Lockers stood open like empty mouths. Nameplates were peeled off one by one. Grant, Torres, Cho, LaRoche, Kruger. Addie Grant folded her captain's armband into a neat square before setting it on the shelf. For 4 years, she'd worn it like armor. Now it was just fabric. Jayla Torres sat cross-legged on the bench, unwrapping the brace from her knee for the last time. The scar along her thigh looked pale and permanent, like the ghost of every sprint she'd never fully recover. You sure you're done? Peyton asked quietly. Jayla nodded. I think my body decided before I did. On the other side of the room, Rachel leaned against her locker, still in her hoodie and warm-ups. Laura sat beside her, methodically rolling up spare tape and stacking training bibs like it meant something. "Feels weird," Rachel muttered. "Season ends and the world just keeps going." Laura didn't look up. "That's sports." "Yeah, but," Rachel kicked at the bench. "It's us. We were supposed to make something happen." Laura's tone softened. "We did, just not the way we thought." 2. Exit interviews. Coach Avery Langford ran her exit interviews with the same precision she ran a match. 15 minutes per player, handwritten notes, silence between questions that could drown a person. When it was Rachel's turn, she fidgeted in the chair, tracing a finger over the edge of Langford's desk. 8 goals, 4 assists, strong first year, Langford said without looking up. "You know what that tells me?" Rachel hesitated. "That I can hang? That you can explode, but explosions aren't sustainable." Langford leaned forward. "You play like lightning, Rachel, but lightning burns out if it doesn't learn to ground itself. Next year I want control. Poise. Learn to dictate, not just react." Rachel nodded, throat tight. "Yes, coach?" "Good. Because if you do, we're building around you." Laura's interview was quieter. Langford waited until the door shut before speaking. "Your sister leads through energy," she said. "You lead through thought. Both can work. But thought without conviction?" She shook her head. "That's hesitation." Laura frowned. "You think I hesitate?" "I think you see too much," Langford said. "You see the whole field, all the angles, and sometimes that paralyzes you." There was no malice in her tone, just fact. "I'm not asking you to be loud," Langford continued. "I'm asking you to take responsibility. Lead the game, Laura. Don't wait for permission." Laura looked down, nodding slowly. "I understand." Langford smiled, barely perceptible. "Good, because next season, there won't be Addie to clean up behind you." 3. What? The seniors left behind. That evening, the twins and a handful of teammates lingered long after everyone else had gone. The seniors' lockers were empty now, only faint outlines where photos used to be taped. Raina Osei stood in front of Addie's stall, her hand resting on the wooden frame. "She really left it clean," she murmured. "She would," Mira said, stepping up beside her. "Addie's probably got her sock drawer color-coded too." Raina smiled faintly. "I'm supposed to take over the captaincy next year." "Good," Mira said simply. "You're ready." Across the room, Rachel pulled out a stray hair tie left in Carmen's locker. She twirled it around her finger, almost absently. "She yelled at me more than anyone," Rachel said. "She yelled because she cared," Kenzie replied. "Trust me, if Carmen didn't yell, you were in real trouble." Honey Keller sat on the floor near the exit, knees to her chest. She hadn't said a word since the news broke. Rachel walked over, crouching down beside her. "Hey," Rachel said softly. "We'll be all right?" Honey nodded without looking up. "I know, just feels like something ended before it even started." Rachel bumped her shoulder. "That's college soccer." "No," Honey said, glancing up finally. "That's growing up." 4. The empty field. 2 days later, the field was quiet again. The lights were off, bleachers empty. Only a few stray cones remained, scattered like old memories. Laura walked the length of the touchline, earbuds in, hands buried in her hoodie. The air smelled faintly of cut grass and rain. She stopped at midfield, looking up at the scoreboard. Dark, blank, silent. Rachel jogged up behind her, breath misting in the cold. "You ever think about how much we sucked in August?" Rachel asked. Laura laughed, quiet and real. "Every day." "Think Coach Langford still believes in us?" Laura's answer came without hesitation. She wouldn't have said what she did if she didn't. They stood there for a while, not talking. The wind pushed at their hair. The season was gone, but something else, something small and stubborn, was still alive beneath it. 5. Lessons in the rubble. Mira Delaney hosted a final team dinner in her apartment the following weekend. Nothing fancy, pasta, garlic bread, a half-burnt cake, but it felt like family. Kenzie and Rachel fought over the aux cord. Raina helped Laura carry trays in from the kitchen. Talia told stories that made everyone cry from laughing. When the plates were cleared, Mira raised a glass of orange soda. "To Addie," she said. "To Addie," everyone echoed. "And to the rest of them," Mira added, voice softening. "They built something we get to finish." Later, when everyone else had left, Mira caught Laura on her way out. "You did well this year," Mira said. "Don't let the record fool you." Laura smiled faintly. "Doesn't feel like it." "It never does after your first season," Mira said. "But you learned what kind of player you are when things don't go right. That's more valuable than winning early." 6. What remains? Final grades. Winter break approaching. The Davis Hitch twins packed their things slowly, leaving their dorm key cards on the counter. Rachel found herself scrolling through her highlight reel late one night, each clip a ghost of what could have been. The 25-yard strike against Wake. The assist against Duke. The missed penalty at Clemson. She closed the laptop. "I'll be better," she whispered into the dark. Across the room, Laura was awake too, staring at the ceiling. Her mind wasn't on stats or standings. It was on leadership. On Langford's voice echoing, "Lead the game. Don't wait for permission." The thought scared her, but it also lit something small and bright inside. 7. Epilogue. The line between endings and beginnings. The last morning before break, snow fell over Chapel Hill, thin, powdery, melting as it touched the turf. The twins met one more time at Dorrance Field. No one else around, just the hum of the city waking up in the distance. Rachel carried a ball. Laura carried nothing. They stepped onto the field, still marked with faint white lines from the fall season, the same ground that had broken them and built them. Rachel dropped the ball and started juggling. Laura watched, arms crossed, until she finally said, "Try not to lose it this time." Rachel smirked. "Don't worry, I've got control now." Laura grinned back. "Good, because next year we lead." The ball bounced once, twice, echoing in the cold air. And for the first time all season, the silence felt like peace, not failure. They'd lost more than they'd wanted. But they'd learned what mattered most. The game hadn't given them glory yet, but it had given them truth. What remains after the whistle isn't the scoreboard. It's the choice to show up again. Chapter 13. The Off-Season and the Promise. Winter came to Chapel Hill so quietly you could mistake it for nothing at all. The gutters ran clear, the campus hummed with finals and leafless trees, and Dorrance Field sat like a memory you kept in a shoebox, edges curled, important but not present until you opened it again. The season felt like a small weather system that had passed, sudden, loud, leaving puddles and a scattering of broken umbrellas. There were no more games to play, no more kits to hang up for another 90 minutes. There were only choices. For some, those choices were obvious signings, jobs, rehab programs. For others, they were painfully open-ended. Come back, rebuild. Take the off-season and do the slow work that made a team mean what it claimed. The twins kept their routines because routine was safer than the silence. December, the first rebuild. Langford handed out plans like a coach handing out armor. Not slogans, not pep talk lists. Plans specific, imposed, unavoidable. A calendar of strength cycles, measurable technical targets, GPS sprint counts that had to be met, film assignments due on certain dates. He slid a copy across to Rachel and Laura with a narrow smile that didn't touch his eyes. "You two," he said, "are the axis. Not the only axis, but a center. You own it next season in how you show up, in what you demand of others, and in how you carry yourself when nobody's watching." Laura read the line items carefully. Interval tempos, recovery windows, positional drills. There was a separate sheet under the heading Leadership that had things written in Langford's block print: speak up in practice, call subs by name, run the capstone set piece, organize the first week on the whiteboard. Rachel's sheet had the word control underlined 3 times. Beneath it, on a post-it note in Langford's handwriting, control decision-making under fatigue, fewer solo runs, more clean passes that change moments. Practical? Rachel said, half to herself, half to Laura. She liked goals that you could measure. It made the work a math problem rather than a moral failing. Laura tapped the top of the sheet with her index finger. "He's not asking us to change who we are," she said. "He just wants us to tune the same instrument." Langford left the room and Jesse Monroe sat down on the end of Rachel's bed, his tablet awake with numbers that meant soreness thresholds, sprint power, and optimal rest intervals. "Science can make stubbornness less wasteful," he said. "You'll love that?" Rachel grinned. "I'm already planning my favorite way to be less wasteful." Jesse laughed. "Good. Then this off-season is about refinement, not reinvention." The weight room and the quiet hours. They began at dawn. The weight room smelled like rubber and metal and quiet determination. Holly Tran, the trainer who could make crying sound like a warm-up, ran the sessions, her clipboard ticking like a metronome. She didn't yell, she trained people until their minds were clearest because they had no biological excuse left. Raina Osei would clap as someone hit a target rep. Talia Brooks used her keeper's explosive drills to judge who would survive a stoppage time scramble. Kenzie Hill sprinted sprints with an unhinged grin that made everyone both laugh and hate her. She would later collapse in a puddle of exhaustion and compliment the same assistant coach she'd just cursed at. Laura learned the language of weights differently. Heavy deadlifts that grounded her core, single-leg stability that taught her to anchor an entire midfield. Rachel took to plyometrics, but also to hitting bar rails with measured force, trained the muscles that stop momentum as much as those that create it. It was teaching her to think about deceleration as an art rather than punishment. There were evenings the team stayed late after coordinating with Holly for return-to-play plans or with Maddie Serrano for goalkeeper specials. Maddie's sessions were a mixture of psychology and strict technical repetition, diving angles until the elbow glazed with sweat, footwork until the ball felt like a part of a bone. Hani Keller would stay after most sessions and take extra finishing touches, head down, unassuming but relentlessness personified. Rachel liked watching Hani. Hani's finishes weren't dramatic. They were efficient. Rachel's, Langford had told her that night, a small lecture before the team dispersed, were sometimes brilliant and sometimes selfish. Hani's were always the kind of finishing you could build a team around. Film room slow-motion truths. Winter practices were made of tiny improvements. The film sessions were cathedral quiet. Laura could sit for 3 hours watching a single sequence and still find new spaces that opened up like secret doors. She annotated frames, wrote timestamps, and left notes on tape that sometimes read like tactical instructions and sometimes like prosaic questions. Who opts into the press here? Why do we invert when Addie drops? Raina would sit beside her and point out a shift in breath that meant a player was tiring. "You can always tell," she'd say, fingers tracing a frame. "Look at the shoulder." It became a ritual, the two of them, the analyst and the sentinel, mapping where like a cartographer maps coasts. Langford started the Monday after the final lock-in with a new exercise. They would watch moments where the team had failed the turnover that started Pitt's first goal, Laura's misread at Tennessee, Rachel's red card tackle, and then they would watch them in sequence until they could name every breath that led to the act. It was a forensic practice that left little room for blind faith. "We don't just fix mistakes here," Langford said. "We retrain the automatic responses that make those mistakes happen." It was work that required humility. The team learned it like they learned new passes, slowly, methodically, with repetition. The scouts and the quiet window. 2 rain-soaked afternoons in February, there were people in the press box who didn't have camera rigs or ESPN badges. They sat, notebook in hand, and watched little details. The angle of Rachel's run, the way Laura shifted her hips before a pass, how Raina made contact without committing her center of mass. They scribbled names and number, not headlines. Langford acknowledged their presence with a short, cool nod and didn't talk about them to the team. But Jesse pulled Rachel aside after the second session and said, "Good eyes on that day. You controlled your runs, you oriented earlier. People noticed." Rachel felt a small, private thrill, the kind you get when someone nods at a clear run. It was not the same as a highlight reel, but it was proof that refinement garnered attention. "You think they're national team scouts?" she asked, trying to sound blasé. Jesse shrugged. "Maybe. Maybe pro, maybe college. Whoever they are, they're looking for players who can do more than flash. That's the first off-season win." Laura, who had been watching the shadows fall across the field, simply added, "It's not about them, it's about us being better than the version that lets the ball ricochet off our shin." Letters, offers, and quiet departures. The inboxes began to ping with decisions. Addie's name was on an email that said "Congratulations" and another that said "Contract offer" in a subject line. Peyton had a coaching contact with a local college. Sammy had an internship offer at a sports marketing firm. Jayla's rehabilitation program suggested a long calendar of work and a potential transfer if she wanted more game time next season, an option she took with a tender, decisive email that the team wrote her off with the kind of sadness you reserve for final chapters. Saying goodbye was its own season. It happened in fits. A dinner at a small Italian place on Franklin Street, a card with inside jokes, Addie's armband handed to Raina with a serious nod and a whispered, "Make them earn it." They smiled and took pictures and pretended the future wasn't a narrowing field. The team folded itself gently around the departures, and then it folded again, this time into the build. The twins' rhythm, rain and repetition. By late February, the campus rain had become a constant, a fine mist that seasoned the air like something that softened edges. Rachel and Laura found themselves on the field at odd hours. Before sunrise, when nobody else had the nerve, late at night after the gym lights had dimmed, they no longer needed to speak to synchronize. Laura warmed up with measured technical work, tossing passes that forced Rachel to master the half-turn under pressure. Rachel practiced her first touch, but she also did the tedious drills Langford insisted on, the ones that made decision-making under fatigue possible. One wet evening, when the lights were on for maintenance and the rest of the team had long since gone home, Rachel tried a sequence she'd been failing to execute in training all week. A 1-2 with the inside of her boot, a deliberate lockstep pass to defender's shoulder, and a low cross that solicited a first-time strike. 3 times she missed. On the 4th, she set the ball down, took a breath, and the run unfolded like architecture. Laura watched, notebook closed, arms folded. "Better," she said simply. Rachel wiped the spray from her face and laughed, surprised at the sound. "Do you think this is boring?" Laura shook her head. "This is what the rest of our lives look like if we keep going." They ran through a finishing sequence until both of them were sloppy with fatigue and steady with intention. The rain washed at their sleeves. They moved in silence except for the rhythmic pat of their coach's stopwatch at a distance and the occasional hiss of breath. Later, when they walked back to the locker room, Laura said, "Promise me one thing." Rachel glanced at her. "What?" "Don't be fast for the sake of being fast." Rachel thought of the red card night, of the time her swagger had cost their team a minute of winning. "I won't," she said, and she meant it in a way that had weight. "I'll be fast for the right reasons." They shook on it like they were sealing something less solemn and more binding than a contract. The recruit hints, names in Langford's mouth. Langford called a meeting with his staff one morning in early March and brought up names. He didn't show highlight packages. He showed clips of positional play. A left back who inverted brilliantly, a striker who held the ball under pressure, a center mid who could replicate Laura's pass with more pace and less hesitation. "We need players who make the system better, not players who show off the system," he said. Jesse pushed up the projection and noted a handful of recruits the staff had tracked. A high school center mid from Florida with a knack for late runs, a wing from Texas with a slingshot cross, and a goalkeeper in the Northeast who tracked well and had an 89% distribution rate under pressure. "We'll bring a couple into spring ball," Langford said. "See them in our environment. See how they respond to the non-glory parts." The twins listened with measured interest. The word environment gathered meaning. It wasn't just the field and the locker room, it was the daily insistence that turned intention into habit. Late winter, a single showcase. On a raw Saturday in March, UNC hosted a small showcase, a smattering of regional college teams, one pro development squad, and a quietly important group of scouts and coaches who sat in the press box in unbranded jackets and took notes like they were copying sacred texts. The Tar Heels scrimmage was clean, not spectacular. Laura looked steady. Her passes had the soft, necessary arrogance of someone who had decided to speak up. Rachel intercepted a misplayed back pass and took a single touch before driving the ball into the net from outside the box, a controlled, purposeful strike that got a murmur from the stands. Hani finished a break with textbook precision. Reina blocked and defended as if she had the entire season's grief wrapped inside her shoulders and chose to hold it steady instead of letting it crush her. Scout scribbled. A woman in a navy coat kept glancing at her tablet. An older man took pictures with a camera whose lens swallowed light. No one announced themselves. Langford didn't either. Afterwards, a coach from a pro academy lingered with Jessie for 5 minutes near the turf and asked about their twins. "They complement each other," he said. Jessie nodded slowly. "That's what we want, not one star, but a diet that makes others better." Handshakes were polite. The scouts left with curt nods. Langford watched them go like a man who had just traced a map and decided where to begin next season. The promise small things that stack. Spring arrived like a small promise. Less rain, more sunlight, a sound like a tentative chorus of new life. Practices took on a different timbre. More quick touches, more simulated scenarios, more speakers added to the whiteboard. The team did not forget the losses. Instead, it folded them into its vocabulary. Mistakes were annotated and then rerun until the body remembered the answer. Rachel sat in a classroom one afternoon for sports psychology modules the staff had arranged. Langford had insisted everyone come. "You win the wars you prepare for in peace," he said. The psychologist asked them about patience, goal setting, and the mental taste of losing. Rachel kept her answers short, but she listened to others to Hani, who said she was afraid to take a shot because she'd seen the look on Addie's face after some missed chances. To Kenzie, who said she wanted to stop being a joke and start being a tool. They all listened, and in listening, something stitched. Laura had a different project. She volunteered to run sessions for underclassmen, taking the whiteboard and drawing the sliding scale of possession, how to move without the ball, how to make the simple pass become the great pass. She learned how to give instruction. Short, sharp, encouraging. The first time a sophomore came up to say she'd followed one of Laura's notes in a match, and it had worked. Laura felt a kind of fear she'd never felt before, the fear of responsibility that takes the shape of a bright, precise hunger. A quiet night. The mirror at the end. The week before classes began, the twins found themselves back on Dorrance Field at dusk. The field lights were off, the press box windows reflected a low sky and the ghostly shapes of the empty stands. It was almost exactly like the night they had stood here when they first arrived, and nothing like it at all. They walked to the center circle without talking. The turf was slightly damp from a long spring mist. For a long moment they simply stood there, shoulders touching. Rachel cupped a ball in both hands and rolled it gently. "You ever think about how different it could have been?" she asked. Laura did not answer immediately. "I do," she said finally, "but I think about something else too. I think about how different we are now. Not better, not worse, just shaped." "You sound like a coach," Rachel said, half grinning. Laura actually smiled then, a little crookedly. "Maybe. I listened to one today." They moved to the sideline and sat on the bottom row of the bleachers. Below them, the white lines were faded in places the field had been used, and that was evidence rather than indictment. Rachel swung her legs and thought about the goals they'd missed, the cards they'd earned, the things Addie had told them on senior night. She thought about how Jayla had been stoic in her goodbye email, how Peyton had left a pair of worn cleats in a locker with the note, "Keep the left foot wild." She thought about Reina's calmness and Mira's patience, about Kenzie's dangerous laughter and Hani's quiet efficiency. It had been a season of people becoming less themselves and more a team. Laura's shoulders were steady beside her. The title, the future that the press had given her had been heavy, and she'd had to learn to hold it without letting it define her. She had new language now the language coaches used in the quiet, organize the press, scan early, call the set piece. They sat until the lights in the complex dimmed the maintenance glow, cutting a soft arc across the turf. Then Laura stood and walked toward the center circle. Rachel followed. They stood in the exact place they'd stood the first night they arrived, only now the sky felt larger and their shadows were leaner. Rachel breathed slowly. "Promise me something," she said, but this time her voice had a different shape. not pleading, not testing. A promise for the future. Promise you won't let me run when I shouldn't. Laura looked at her. Promise you won't flame out trying to be seen. They laughed, small and honest. Around them, somewhere in Chapel Hill, recruits were finishing their own seasons, packing highlight reels, answering emails. Somewhere else, scouts were still writing notes. Somewhere else, a young center mid from Florida watched the UNC showcase tape and imagined a different life. Those threads would become the next year's fabric. Langford had been right about one thing. The crest didn't make you worthy. How you showed up did. The twins had learned to show up when nobody was watching. They had learned that lightning needed the ground to burn in the right place. Laura put her hand on the ball, then on Rachel's shoulder. "We stay," she said. Rachel smiled at the field, the empty stands, the cold air that made their breaths like small ghosts. "We stay." They looked out toward the banners on the far end of the stadium. Old numbers, old names, a history of noise and dignity. The blue was not a burden, so much as a horizon. For a moment, a single stunned, bright moment, they felt the possibility of a longer story unfurling in the chill air. They walked off the turf together, their steps synchronized by habit, by muscle memory, by a bond that no loss could rupture. At the gate, Laura paused and turned back, watching the field for one last breath. She put her hand on the chain link and felt the cold jump into her palm. Rachel leaned into her. "What do you think we'll be when we come back?" she asked. Laura thought of Langford's small directives, of the lists on Jesse's tablet, of Holly's clipboard and Maddie's sharp calls, and Raina's steadying presence. She thought of the little stitches that make a team resilient. "We'll be the kind of team that knows the cost of winning," she said, "and still chooses it." They walked across the parking lot and into the dark of early spring, their cleats leaving faint prints in the mud. Behind them, the field was waiting lines etched, nets still soft from winter rain. Ahead of them was a season they could plan for, not a scoreboard they had to defend. They had arrived as kids who dreamt under banners. They would return as players who had learned to take those banners and ask them to mean something. They stood for a long time at the entrance of the field, palms in pockets, breath slow. The wind moved across their faces, and somewhere, distant but real, the city of Chapel Hill began to wake. And under that wash of ordinary dawn, they said nothing and meant everything. They'd come to Chapel Hill dreaming of greatness. They'd stay because losing had taught them something harder, who they really were.
Thank you for joining us on this journey. Until next time, stay safe.